Hey, folks. Hey, I am live today. It is Sunday morning, March 1st, the first of the month, y'all. Wake up, wake up. It's the first of the month. Get up, get up, get up. I used to love that damn song, y'all, when I was a kid. Bone Thugs. I love me some Bone Thugs back in the day. High school, like early, like really middle school into high school, me and Bone Thugs, and then also Crucial Conflict. Anywho, that's not what this is about. Welcome in, y'all. Welcome in, welcome in, welcome in, y'all. So if you're listening to this and it is not Sunday morning at 11 a.m. Central Standard Time, that means you are catching a taping of my show either on my YouTube channel or on my Spotify or on Spotify or Apple. Hey, Shag, happy Sunday, happy Sunday. All right. What I do though, y'all, is if you are interested in catching the show live, you can do so by joining my Patreon. You can sign up at the free tier, and folks at the free tier and higher have access to all of my lives. And if you want a full recording of these episodes without any kind of edits, then you can find that on the Patreon exclusively at the groundscape level or higher. And those tiers start at $5 a month. Otherwise, you can catch slightly edited versions of every episode over on my YouTube channel. I got some things cooking over that I'm thinking about to liven up that YouTube, so stay tuned for that as well, all right? So my YouTube and Patreon are where you can really catch me in my content. All right, y'all, come on in, come on in. We got a full moon this week. We had a lot of shit happen leading up to this week. We got BAFTA. We had one of the most disrespectful, I think, Black History Months in recent times. We've also got a war ensuing, right? We've got the president in cahoots with Israel, and now we are going at it with Iran, right? We also got end of Olympics, and we got disrespect from the president there as well, when we had the difference between the men and the women's hockey teams and how they were received and the consequences of said actions. So we're going to weave all of this together, right? We're going to weave all of these things together today as we look at this full moon in Virgo, all right? Yeah, they played all Black History Month, right, Desi? So this is something I want us to ask ourselves. Do we believe? Do we believe? And if we believe, then what actions do we take? So let's get into it, y'all. All right, let's get into it today. The sun and moon oppose each other this week as we have a full moon in Virgo, meaning we also have the nodes involved, as the north node is in Pisces and the south node is in Virgo. Remember, the nodes are calculation points on the moon. So the collective has a spotlight on our purpose right now, and we are seeing the consequences of opening the door to a con man and then pretending that someone else will save us. So what does it mean really for us to save ourselves? Well, we need different practices, a release of the critical and dogmatic ways we have been taught to care for ourselves through offloading in various ways. So this full moon shines a light into the void of the collective and asks us to look at where we have been addicted to the delusions of tyrants who are nothing more than scammers, scamming a foundationally scamming ass system. So with Venus making her way into Aries later this week, but before that, we got Mars going into Pisces. Collectively, we are also being given the drive to bend justice to our will if we dare to grow up and take responsibility for our own care. So what would a practice of devotion to caring for the self look like? And then how does that influence the imaginations of what we can create and build next? This is the weekly forecast for March 1st through 7th. It's a full moon in Virgo, y'all. So what is your practice of devotion? Welcome back to Yapping with the Stars, the show where I talk about what it means and takes for us to become human once again, in a world trying to convince us that this is all there is, and it's not. So let's talk with the cosmos and see what else is possible. I am your host and guide, Nicole Rouse, a storyteller who comes from a line of storytellers who weave and tell stories in many different ways. And as an anthropologist, astrologer, and artist, I work with astrology and ethnography to explore the stories of what it means for us to be human. Because right now the present is up for grabs. So who is leading the stories that will bring us into our futures? Now, every Sunday we check into the chaos we call society and ask two pressing questions. What's the cosmos showing us this week? And what are we being called to move, create, burn, build, and or reflect upon, y'all? we got to reflect because there's a lot of shit going on. And last week, I introduced cards because I was talking about this idea of divination and why divination as a practice is something that we do need to bring back in various ways as a way for us to learn how to trust ourselves again. Divination allows us to believe ourselves by our intuition. So we have these different tools and different methods that we can work with, right? In order to tap into that kind of knowing, tap into that self knowing as a way for us to ask ourselves, do we believe and trust ourselves enough to actually then use that as a foundation of what we do next? And I liked it because it keeps me kind of focused in different ways. So this week I was looking down on my desk to see what I had, and I'm prepping for the Patreon. Now, if y'all are in the dreamscape or soundscape level or higher, you should have gotten a calendar invite for me. We got a divination study session tomorrow, and then 3 weeks later. All right, we're getting back into it, and I'm prepping because we're going to be looking at the tarot as a foundational way to think about how we build stories, because really it's about archetypes, and the archetypes that we tell ourselves, the archetypes that we embody, that we see in others as a way of pattern recognition. And if we understand the archetypes that we have been kind of groomed into and realize though that they're energies that can be transmuted, how do we work with these kind of templates that are already there as a way to move these archetypes into something else? So we're going to talk about that in divination, okay? You're going to start making your own kind of deck by playing with archetypes. So if you're in that, we'll talk about that more tomorrow. But that's why I had a couple of different tarot decks on my desk. That's the whole point of this. And so I figured, okay, why not? Let's see what Spirit has to say about this full moon in Virgo as we talk about a couple of these different stories, especially what's going on with Iran and the U.S. and Israel, what's going on with this Black History Month and the disrespect and the BAFTA conversation that has left us in these kind of circular ass conversations once again. And then alongside that, then the Olympics and representation of a nation and what happens when your president disrespects those who literally represented you at a global scale, but everybody else can see it. How does that then have us think about the tipping of these archetypes and the tipping of power? So let's leave it together and see what Spirit has to say. So what I have here is the Afro Goddess Tarot Arcana, the first edition. Last week I used Grandma's Apothecary's Lenormand deck, and where I had tagged her online. And she was like, wow, one of the first editions in the wild. And I realized I have a lot of random first editions from Black, particularly Black women and Black queer tarot creators. Because back in the mid 2010s, do y'all remember that wave in the 2010s? Especially on Facebook, with the kind of wave of folks, especially leaving the church, but coming into like all of the different types of spiritual practices and stuff. And folks were getting into crystals and tarot and oracle. Well, there was also the rise of a lot of Black and queer spiritualists starting to create their own decks. And so I got a lot of, as many as I could, some of the first editions of those decks, because I really like the imagery of them, as they were able to speak more to the not just the archetypes of the tarot, but put that into a cultural context. And I want us to remember that, y'all, when we're talking about any kind of divination system, any kind of spiritual system, it must be put into a structural analysis and a cultural context. Otherwise, it's nothing but makes a goddamn sense. And that's what I think a lot of what we're seeing right now and what we're having to face right now with this full moon in Virgo that's going to be happening on Tuesday, all right, March 3rd. We're having this full moon in Virgo that is shining a light right on the collective. It's shining a light and it's asking us, because the moon in mundane astrology represents the collective. I don't do mundane astrology as much. So I do more of the personal astrology and how we can examine that as in a collective way. But when we look at mundane astrology, the moon is the collective. And right now that moon is going to be near that south node. It'll hit the south node as it does frequently because the moon travels so quickly. But it's going to be on that south node. So there's a collective release of what? Virgo. What does Virgo represent? Virgo represents health. Virgo represents service, understandings of service and servitude. It's also logic systems. What are the logic systems that we are engaged with? And it's ruled by Mercury. It's a space in which Mercury both is at home, but also exalted. So even Mercury is in love with the body aspect of its side, because Virgo is also feminine and it is earth. So what does all that mean together, y'all? Well, how have we been taught collectively? How have we been taught how to care for ourselves? What is care for us as a society? What is service, and how are we understood service? Who is told to be of service, of servitude? When we look at Virgo and the Virgo's kind of imagery, it's usually of a maiden. They talk about it as the maiden, as the virgin. But what is a virgin? And how is a virgin defined, right? Like a virgin, hey, touch for a very first time. I used to be in a sorority, y'all, and true story, true story. I was in a sorority, and that sorority loved that goddamn song. They would play that song over and over and over again, offbeat, every goddamn party. Long story short, Desi knows too because she was in that sorority as well. Anywho, but what does a virgin mean, right? What does it mean to be a virgin? And how is virgin defined? Well, you got to go back in time. This is why you got to put everything, including astrology, into a cultural context. When we look at the idea of Virgo as the idea of virgin and service and maiden and all of this shit, when it's through a patriarchal lens, then this is always in this kind of vein of giving something up, of almost a martyrdom. And you see this kind of iconography of Virgo kind of played out over space and time. But if you go deeper and if you go outside the patriarchal constructs and outside the patriarchal lens, then Virgo in this idea of the virgin is really the idea of those who have wombs, women, being able to care for themselves, being independent, right? So you could be in a cult of Virgo, cult not meaning how it means today, but in these kind of constructions of societies that have a primary kind of deity or orientation to them that brings you together, right? Usually over a certain skill or craft that you have. But then that got shifted over time. It got made to bend to the will of power. So then service was of servitude to power in some way, shape, or form. And so in doing so, then the body becomes a site of discipline. The body becomes a site that must be controlled, conformed, contorted. And whose bodies tend to be controlled the most in a society? Those that are deemed unruly, those that push back just by being against these rigid systems that make no sense. So now we got a full moon in Virgo. Why am I bringing all of this up? Moon next to or near that south node in Virgo, collectively, the collective is having to look at how we literally care for ourselves. This is a reoccurring theme, y'all. Reoccurring theme, because we also got Jupiter still over in Cancer. It's going to go direct next week. We'll talk about that next week. But we have Jupiter in Cancer expounding and expanding our belief systems and understandings of how structures of power have talked and taken about and cared about the family unit. Well, now this full moon is illuminating collectively understandings of care, understandings of service, and looking over into Pisces. The North Node is there. We got the sun there. We got Mercury retrograde there. We got Venus there. There is a highlighting of the ways that collectively we have to look at how we have been delusional. This is a career. We talked about this last week. We have to look at how we've been delusional about how we have been taught to care for ourselves by giving up that care to something or someone else. So what does it mean to take it back? What does it mean to come back to different practices of care, so that we can figure out what it is that we truly need? This again is a reoccurring theme, a reoccurring story, because every time we don't believe that story, every time we give up and think that, it can't get any worse than this, or somebody else is gonna come in and save us, or that he can't do that because it's against the law. He says challenge, right? Motherfucker be tap dancing like Gregory Hines. Every time we think he says he can't do something, he tells you that he can't, because the floor moves. North Node in Pisces right now, with that sun, there is an illumination. When the sun and North Node meet, there is usually this kind of examination or illumination of one's purpose. Well, collectively, we are being shown our purpose. It is time for us to take responsibility, right, for the types of worlds we want to live in by actually creating them and finding our feet. And I say that because Mercury here, Mercury is in Pisces, but Mercury is ruling where that south node is right now. So this is a collective remembering. How do we remember? We talked about this last week. So what do we collectively remember? We remember how to be fucking racist. That's what we remember. That's what we remember. We remember how to double down in narratives that make no sense in order to skirt responsibility around how we are all complacent in these systems. And I want to talk about BAFTA for the BAFTA awards in this respect, because what happened there was a really interesting kind of a mirror moment. Full moons are about mirror moments, y'all. Full moons illuminate. Full moons force us to look through the dark. The things that we have not seen that have been hidden, they come to light a bit more. This is a collective coming to light, a collective remembering. Because what happened over there in England is a prime example of what it looks like to not understand that that care is collective. We are a very individualistic society, but not all of us. I'm just saying overall, very individualistic society whose progenitor comes from that island. That island is the progenitor of a lot of this shit, right? The US is a child of the British Empire that said, we don't like you, so we're going to do it our way. But regardless of it, we are a byproduct of the way in which that island's power structure understood living in life, in the relationship to living in life. So now you go over there and you have a movie that is the embodiment, right, of the consequences of that British Empire. Because it was an Irish vampire who was longing for home, longing for roots, longing for ancestors. Why? Because his were disconnected by the consequences of that British Empire. But Remick digested his oppressor, therefore reproducing what his oppressor had done to him, thinking he was going to get liberation. So then he did exactly what his oppressor did. He went to consume life somewhere else, and he went onto the shores of a new land, and he was trying to consume those who he saw life in. This is why I will always push back against Afro-pessimism. You do not feed off the dead, you feed off the living. It is not blackness that is a walking dead, it is whiteness. Therefore, it needs the black body, it needs the brown body, it needs any body that it sees having life, life being a connection to something else, a connection to a spirit, a connection to land, a connection to something other than yourself. We are not dead, we are where life is. That is not no hotep shit. That is the reality of what it means to be living in a society that has gaslit you and your ancestors for millennia. So what does it look like to take that story back, to become devoted to the self as a way to resurrect the self a different way? That BAFTA showed, that movie showed it. It showed what it looks like for those who have been colonized with the same oppressor to actually come together. He liberated Remick when he allowed him to finally fucking die. As he is being choked, he kills him out of empathy and love. That was care, collective community care. It goes beyond you. So do we know how to care for ourselves and one another? Release, full moon, of how we have been taught care via individuality, and in actuality that doesn't make any sense because it's about the community. So who are we communing with and why? So somebody has a disability, and it's an involuntary tic. We call it Tourette's. And there is a large room being set up to honor a movie that is highlighting the impact of an empire. And you are now in the belly of that beast, being honored for showing the ways in which the colonized can actually push back against the colonizer. And so what do when you can't deny that kind of a cinematic genius? You can't deny the impact. It's not about whether you like the story or not. There are plenty of stories you cannot like, but you can't deny its impact. I don't like Wuthering Heights. I can't deny the impact of that book, right? I never would. I just don't care for the story. So you can't deny the impact of this story that has resurrected the dead in a different way, a different light, as accomplices, and also as ones who can also grow up and grow with us into new futures. A crossroad's been opened. So then you set it up to ensure that that crossroad is diverted to what that power structure, that belly of the beast wants. Now we find out he got hot mics. You put a mic in front of somebody who you know has the ability to be disruptive involuntarily because it is a tick. So then it happens, the event happens, and those who have been harmed, the two black men up top, right? They then have to, quote unquote, be professional, whatever the fuck that means in that moment. Really, it is about realizing that you are in the belly of the beast in the moment, the movie that you showed others, you are now enacting in real time. It is no longer an act, it is reality. This is what happens when the crossroads collide, y'all. So in that moment, the actor now becomes the actual embodiment of what it is also being supposedly highlighted for. And so you do what you are trained to do. You move that energy somewhere else. And then the aftermath occurs. The aftermath tells us just how prime society is for something for the new. And we're not. Because it's the same old story over and over again. He couldn't help it. No one said he could, but there's a consequence to our actions. Even if you cannot help, we have to be in community, care for one another. So what does it look like to understand that somebody can involuntarily have a tic, but say something so derogatory? Because even in that involuntary nature, the grooming of your body in these societies that see the Black body as somehow lesser than you, for whatever reason, means that the way in which you understand how to read that body will come through a word that is loaded. That is something that is not just on you, that is on a society. So now you become the tool of an empire. You become the tool of an empire. Because we know that whole organization is, the president is that prince. That prince who is, we know, has a temper, who is not ready to take on leadership. So you do what any temper tantrum little brat does. You make sure that you poke fun of somebody else and you use them as the dunce. It is a tale as old as time that has real fucking consequences. But at the end of the day, it's the same storyline over and over again. We do not know how to care for ourselves and one another collectively outside of these fucking systems. Because when we talked about care, when Black folks were saying, listen, this is the problem, right? It is not saying that it is just on him, but the problem is there's a way that we are always asked to carry the burdens, to put it on our back. The ability to somehow be the Jiminy Cricket, to be the one that has to be above it all, who cannot have a disability, who cannot falter in public, must always be the embodiment of the perfection that you can never actually have. So we're seeing these scripts over and over again. So where does the care come in? Where does the care come in? Because there's no care for that man either. There's no care for that man, John, either. Because then where do we then learn how to grow up and in? Grow up and into ourselves so that we can grow up and into communities. This past weekend, I went out with a friend. And it was a shit show of a night, Friday night. Trying to just get there, it took fucking forever. Found out halfway there that it was a party. I knew it was a party for a fundraiser. They're building. They're starting a Montessori school. You know, I'm all for this. But it was cash only. I didn't have no cash. Tried to go to the ATM to get money out of the damn credit union. Can't get in the damn building. Had to go through, gotta go to the west side, try to go to Walgreens. They only give $20 back. Long story short, to get to the goddamn party took forever, right? So I'm already flustered. My body's already up. There's a point to the story. Stay with me. So then I get to the party and I see my friend, and 20 minutes fucking later, I'm still driving because I'm trying to find parking because it's a co-op. So we're in the west side, it's in the neighborhood, it's in the city, it's a pain in my ass. So finally I get out there, get to the party, pay the money to get in. There's not a whole lot of people there. There's music blaring here. One song's going here. They've got a video screen going up of music videos, but it's not the same song that's playing here. I mean, I'm realizing I'm overstimulated. I'm basically internally melting down. Okay. So my friend's here and she's trying to talk to me and she's like, are you okay? And I said, I'm just fucking irritated right now. It's not you. I'm just irritated. I'm just trying to figure this out. Right. And so she's staying with me and she's like, okay, Nicole, let's let me know what I need to do what I can do to support you. And in that moment, I wanted to say, I got to get out of here. I'm just overstimulated. It's no one's at fault. I just can't handle this, but I didn't because I felt bad. So I stayed, had a drink, went outside to have a smoke, tried to calm myself down. Long story short, by the end of the night, the lights come up real quick, and I realized that I'm all over the place. We walk to the car. She's walking me to my car, and she's asking me questions, and I'm just snapping back. Like I'm realizing I'm snapping back, and I'm like, I think I just need to go eat and whatever it is. So then I go out. I know a spot that's open till 2 a.m. I said, look, I can go here. It's usually quiet. I can get some food and figure out what the fuck's going on. I get inside, y'all. I shit you not. I have never in my life seen this place have more than maybe 4 people in it. I walk in because I'm committed. I'm hungry. I'm overstimulated. I'm trying to figure out what the fuck's going on. I'm committed. I walk in. It is full. Now, this is a Japanese izakaya. It is full of white people. It's fucking karaoke. And I walk in as they're singing. Guess what? Guess what song they're singing? Sweet Caroline. I said, mother of fucking pearl. What the hell is going on tonight? But I'm committed. I'm like, I can do this. I can do this. So there's one seat at the bar. I sit at the bar. I'm like, okay, let me get an old fashioned. I get the drink and I order some food and I disassociate. I felt it. I was like, oh my God, my soul's up here. Because after Sweet Caroline came that other goddamn song. Was it Jack and Diane? Like it kept going, y'all. It kept going. And they kept getting louder and offbeat. And I was like, I can't do this. So I said, let me just get my food. Let me get my food to go. Get my food to go to the car. I sit there. I realized for an hour, just sat there for an hour. I realized slowly eating fried rice. Why am I saying all this? In that moment, I realized I owed my friend an apology. So I voice noted her and I apologized. I said, I was fucking mean for no reason. And I meant it. I said, I was mean for no reason. I am very sorry. I did not realize how overstimulated I was. The shit was, this is weird. This is different. I said, I just walked into a goddamn frat party. And I said, I realized I'm overstimulated. And I said, and I also realized you asked and you were kind enough to make a space. And I was mean. And I am fucking sorry. And then I started crying. That's when I realized I really was overstimulated. Okay. She voice notes me back, says, I totally understand. I wasn't for sure if I did something wrong, but this makes sense. I figured maybe you were overstimulated. I know we talked about you realizing, you've got the ADHD, you've got, you're a little bit on the autism, so I know we're all figuring this out. I responded back, I really appreciate that. I really do. But also that's not an excuse, right? I'm dealing with it. I'm understanding all these new things that are coming out, especially at the age, starting to become perimenopausal, all this shit, right? We can talk about the tropes of the middle-aged woman who figured out that she was masking her whole life, and then the shit pops out and it falls down, and right, and the whole life blows up. Yes, we can tell that story, and we need to tell that story. I'm writing a book about it, right? A lot of us need to tell that story. But we got to be in community. And there is a way that she saw it and she asked. And I wasn't vulnerable enough in that moment to say, yes, I really am overstimulated. I don't know if I can stay, because I was afraid that I was going to hurt her feelings or do something else. Right? Like it was a story, it was a trope. Right? I didn't believe her, even though she has always shown up. That woman has always shown up for me. I have known her for over 20 years. Our kids play Roblox together, hang out, right? Like we had our honeymoon on accident together, like a ride or die with this woman. Okay. And in that moment, because it was so overwhelming, but also I was embarrassed because I was like, why am I overstimulated? Like I realized I was embarrassed internally too. And so what do we do when we're embarrassed in these societies, especially where we're trained to try to be right or try to save face or do something else? We align with power in some way, shape, or form. So I got mean. And I don't like that because she did nothing wrong and I had no idea why I was being mean. So there is an acknowledgement here. doesn't mean that I'm a shitty person, doesn't mean that she's thinking I'm a shitty person. It means that in that moment, I was fucking mean for no reason and I needed to take responsibility for that, especially when she did nothing wrong and she was trying to make a space, right? When I think about the aftermath of all of this shit with BAFTA, that's what I come back to. Community care. It doesn't mean that he was malicious. It doesn't mean that, and everyone's like, was saying that, oh, you're calling him racist or not. Grow the fuck up, y'all. Everyone's racist in these fucked up streets. Kiss my ass with that at this point. This is what I mean when Saturn says we got to grow up. Saturn with Neptune and Aries. We got to grow up with these stories too, with these concepts, with these constructs. If we cannot reflect upon our past and understand the past that we are doing, and examine that past and bring that past into the present so that we can also have that past grow up, we are going to continuously having these ridiculous conversations in which on one hand, we got folks telling us, not just here, also across that pond, literacy rates are down as level and down more than ever. We got a population in which this generation is not as smart as the population before predecessing it. Well, so we have that going on. Well, at the same time, anytime anything comes up around gender, right, or around race, all of a sudden, everyone's a goddamn fucking expert in biology. Come on now. Right? Come on now. What are we doing here? What are we doing here? We got to grow up with these stories. Full moon in Virgo is asking us to do that as well. It's a continuous conversation. Because, Andrea, yes, people would rather go homeless than ask for help because we have been shamed. We have been shamed into believing that caring for ourselves is somehow a problem. So you offload it to everything. But when you can't afford it to offload it, right? Because how we've been taught self-care, it's been an illusion and a trickery. Self-care was introduced via many movements. Like I said last week and a few weeks ago, Black Panthers and all of this. We have these movements that were constructed, and the foundations of them were providing care for communities. That got co-opted once again because this cog in the machine in power is really good at what it does at consuming and turning it out and making it a commodity. So now self-care is not knowing how to do anything for yourself, having everything because our lives are so busy, we can't do anything. But in order to live up with that, you got to have the income. So it's this rat race. It's this rat game that we play. And so we get trapped. And then the vulnerability comes up because we don't know how to ask, because then we get judged. And the judgment is so deep. The judgment is, the criticism is so strong that it becomes the foundation. But is it real? Virgo, South Node is there. Moon is coming up. Full moon illuminating. Where do we need to release the critic in us so that we can actually figure out how to care for ourselves? Right? And it does become, I can see that, Shay. It becomes abusive when asking. So this is where the discernment comes in. This is where discernment comes in. We got Pisces activated. Mercury's retrograding. Can we reflect upon what does and doesn't actually work? Because do we go to the same person who keeps showing us their ass, expecting a different outcome? So this goes back to what does it look like for us to save ourselves? It really goes to the question of how do we care for ourselves? So then what do we need for care? Do we know what we need for care? Because right now, what we are being shown is that care comes through bullets, care comes through missiles, care comes through bombings. Because now the U.S., really Trump, right? Trump with Israel, Netanyahu, is now telling us that care is the bombing of a nation, and in particular, bombing a school, bombing an all-girls school. So the nation is showing us, the state is showing us just what it believes care is and how it will maintain its care of a society. It is through nothing but violence. So do we believe? And there's a memory here, a reflection that has to happen. There's this woman that's online, some white woman talking about how she, voted for Trump 3 times and now she regrets it and she's pulling back from being MAGA, but then she's getting all of this so-called hate online and people are upset with her about this. And, how can we heal if we don't? All the same old tropes. Again, the same old storyline, the same old bullshit. So then what do we do with that? Right? What do we do with that? What is the point of the story if it doesn't move anywhere? Because when you hire a con man to come in, he will do exactly what he said he will do. He will con you. So then what does it look like to believe the con and realize that once you believe the con can no longer con you? This is Piscean energy right now and the delusions that we're having to open up to. Because the con is believing that that man will actually live up to anything he says. And who learned that the best? The men's hockey team. I'm going to get to the cards, y'all. I just remembered that I kept talking and I forgot to pull the damn cards. I'm going to get that in a second. But the men's hockey team. The men's hockey team found out real quick again, right? Exactly who that man is. So the men and women's U.S. hockey teams win gold, right? Been a long time since the men done it. Apparently, I don't follow hockey, y'all, so forgive me. And the women's hockey team has won previously, more recently than the men's. And let me know if I'm wrong in that in the comments, y'all. So then what happens? Trump being Trump, right? Trump being Trump calls the men. Right. And then the men thought they were doing something and were laughing at his misogynistic jokes. And then he invites them to the White House while shitting on the women. It's always interesting that in order for many of these power structures and these men in power to actually elevate themselves, they always have to do it by shitting on someone else, not on their own accolades, not just resting on their own morals and their own kind of actions. It has to always be in juxtaposition to somebody else. That's that binary thinking, y'all, that's embedded in all this shit. And the minute you hear that, realize you talking to somebody who probably ain't got shit. I mean that, really. I really do mean that. It's always gonna move in the floor or something. Because then what did the men get? The men got exactly what every team has gotten when they went to that White House with that man who was nothing more than the emperor has no clothes. Exactly what Liv said in the comments: Burger King and photoshopped images. And then Trump using AI, the White House using AI now, making fun of them. That's what you get. That's what you get when you don't believe, right? When the con man keeps conning and you believe that somehow you are a part of the story when in actuality you are the tool and the joke, that is the kind of energy that we are having to collectively really reflect upon now and have a hard look at. Have a hard look. Because when we go back to the whole conversation with the BAFTAs and with John with his outbursts, right? And Delroy and Michael B. Johnson having to endure that. And then the other woman after having to endure it. And then the consequences and then the backlash of society telling folks they don't understand enough. And, how dare someone accuse someone of racism when this is about, a disability and everyone is ableist. It's really interesting how all of a sudden people give a shit about ableism. Well, at the same time, we're having a whole epidemic of folks trying to get as skinny as possible in order to fit into a fucking aesthetic. Pick a goddamn lane, y'all. Because right now, none of these conversations make any sense. None of the conversations make any sense. So this is what happens when you're using nonsense as the foundation of sense. So what are the logics that we're engaging in? So this is what the South Node in Virgo is also going to be asking us to do. So let's look at the logic of what Spirit's saying. So again, I'm using the Afro Goddess Tarot deck, and let's see what Spirit is saying. Oh, well, damn, that came out quick. The world. And underneath the deck is the Hierophant. What is the world that we are creating? So this is going to continue the conversation. So this is literally the Piscean energy right now. What are we creating? Because this is the end. This is the end of what we know. This is the end of the world as we know it. This is the end. So what is the now new beginning? 21 reduces down to 3. 3 is the energy of creativity, is the energy of creation. 1 + 1 is 3, right? When two bodies come together to make another. So who are you coming together with to create something new, to create something else? And is that creation one that is painted with your knowledge by bringing together your light and your dark? This is a self-reflective moment. So when we reflect upon the self, when we come into the self, y'all, again, this is how we form the collectives that will allow us to figure out what it is we need to have a sustainable future. So this is where devotion comes in. Devotion is required right now more than ever. And this is where the South Node is asking us to release the criticalness, to release the kind of ways that we've been taught service and servitude of martyrdom. Because has it helped us? Do you know how to ask for care? And if somebody cannot provide it, can you believe them and then to go somewhere else, focus somewhere else, engage somewhere else? So right now, we now have Mars moving into Pisces this week as well. So we're going to have a number of personal planets in Pisces. We got Mars, we got the North Node, we got Sun, we got Mercury retrograde, we got Venus for a little bit before then Venus makes her way over into Aries at the end of this week. So Mars moves into Pisces, then we get a full moon in Virgo, which means you got the Sun opposite Virgo, Pisces, and then you're going to have Venus at the end of the week moving into Aries. We are still in this conversation between the feet and the head, y'all. Between the collective feet and the self's head. And there has to be a bending. There has to be a shift. There has to be a personal responsibility taken in the construction of the stories that we are telling around justice, around relationships, and around money. Because remember, anytime when we're talking about detriments with me, I see detriments as a queering of that planet, as a queering of that planet via queering that sign. Something I've been thinking a lot about is when we talk about planets being in detriment, I don't necessarily think I agree. I think that when planets go through different signs, it either amplifies that sign or it bends that sign. It expands that sign and forces that sign to shift and change, right? It's a little shift of the understanding of this stuff, but I do think this matters because when we think about Aries, when we think about, Venus, the planet again of love, of beauty, of money, of feeling good, of us reminding ourselves she is a warrior. So warring over and being ferocious about your pleasure, about the kind of culture, about why we are here, right? This idea of love. Love at its core, love is fire, love is an action, love is embedded in the foundations of things. When she goes through Aries, right, there is a way that Aries does have to bend itself a bit because it can't just sit here and be the aggressor, be the starter. It has to shift the way that it strategizes, right? And I think that's important. We're being asked to shift our strategies. It's not always aggressive going out there punching because we see what that gets us. So what does it look like to seduce a bit? What does it look like to have a different relationship to our understandings, right? Of aggression, of war, of what it means to ignite and start something. So if we grow up with Saturn being here as well with Neptune, if we can grow up and really reflect and embody ourselves, then this is where the practices of care come in. So ritual is important right now. Ritual is very important right now. So I recommend this. Last week I gave some homework. Anyone remember what the homework was last week? Because I was trying to remember and I wrote some stuff down. Excuse me, and I cannot find it. But I know we were talking about storytelling and story making and archetypes, right? And how there is a way we have to start to kind of tell new stories foundationally. What I recommend, we have the equinox coming up, okay, on the 20th of this month. So that really is kind of the new year. That's the start of spring in the Northern Hemisphere. And so it's the start of the zodiac as well. So if this is where your new year is, you can see this time as the kind of ending of the old as we go into the new. What would a ritual practice look like that you could do for 31 days once the equinox comes in that will bring you back to a practice of care for the self? I'm going to repeat that again. What is a ritual you could do consistently for 31 days that you show up to for yourself, that you can be devoted to, that will help you come into a practice of care for the self? Now, this could be anything, y'all, right? At the end of the year, I talked about how I did a 31-day ritual to kind of close out the Gregorian calendar year, where I was 31 days of candle working, because I work with fire a lot. So I work with candle, and it was a way for me to show up, and it reminded me to come to the altar every day, right, as a way to just be. And it was a practice, it was a devotional practice, getting me back into a practice, right, of not thinking that coming in and being with myself was somehow um frivolous, or was somehow extra or something else. Does that make sense, y'all? And so in that, it's a reminder. It's a reminder of coming back into the body. And right now, there is a way we have to be reminded that our bodies matter and that it is not extra. You don't have to do something to earn care. Care has to be centered and central to any kind of organizing, any kind of strategy making, any kind of world building, because otherwise we're just reacting to a man who needs that reaction, to a state who needs that reaction, because it needs us sick and tired and ignorant. It really does. It's chaos, but it's chaos through a patriarchal, violent, top down way. So you meet one chaos with another. And so this full moon is also illuminating for us our care practices and asking us, where does our spirit lie? Where are our spiritual practices? Spirit has to be here. That's the thing, y'all. We have to come back into spirit, but come back into our own spirits. Come back into our own sense of self, which means you have to reclaim the body. You reclaim the body by coming into the feet, by feeling the feet, because that feeling your feet will allow you to realize that the foundation is shaky. This shit is not solid. You are not crazy. Because what is crazy in a society that is telling you this is sane? Whose definition of the words are you using and why? Virgo, the logics. Whose logics are we engaging in? So now we're seeing the ways that society will spin a tale so that those who are presumed to be in power or close to power are always removed for having any responsibility for their actions. Because we have taken responsibility to be seen as bad, good or bad. See this binary again? So when we only see things as good or bad, hero, villain, talked about this last week. Then when somebody's actions, even if they were hot mic'd, have a serious consequence on a national stage, yet the first people that they feel beholden to apologize to are not the people on the stage, but the organization itself and the so-called community that they're a part of, right? That tells you just how much we understand how to care for ourselves and one another collectively. Because it makes no goddamn sense. It doesn't mean that something is wrong with him. It means that your shit has consequences. I was mean to my friend for no fucking reason other than that I was uncomfortable. And that's the first reaction, right? How many of us have had to care for elders who start to get that dementia coming in, and all of a sudden they snapping? Because why? Many times they're frustrated. Their mind don't work the same. They are told that the older you get, the more you're supposed to be independent. But in actuality, the older we get, the more we do need one another. Just like children. Oh, maybe humans are actually communal beings. But what does that even mean to commune? Right? So we see it in elders. We see it in the elderly. We see how when they feel as if they've lost control, there can be, they say the real essence of you comes out, sure. But also we can see just how much everyone's groomed and underlying, right? It's how we know that we'll be discarded. I agree, Shay. In this culture, it means to be discarded. So you have to put this mask on and mask up that you know. I think a lot of our elders have lost, quote unquote, their minds earlier, but they had to put this mask on. And so when the mask comes off, it crashes hard. It crashes hard and fast. And it can be discombobulating because you feel like one day they were here and so strong, and the next day they're gone, but they themselves have been masking. And then this kind of essence comes out. And even then, we're seeing all these consequences in old folks' homes, right? Especially of older white folks who, in their dementia, don't forget to be racist. And all this forgetting, you don't forget that shit. Right? It's as American as apple pie. So again, let's go back to even what our ticks are, our reactions are. It's amazing how racism is always there in some way, shape, or form. Misogyny is there in some way, shape, or form. It's foundational. It's how we're groomed into these societies. So the logic systems have to be reevaluated, because then we are seeing the consequences of that again when a man's team wins, and instead of realizing that you're talking to a con man, you get conned yourself, and now you conned yourself out of any kind of respect. But it's okay. It's the rise of then what it means to actually be a team. So the women's team comes up and now they're being touted out here, but then even their victory gets overshadowed by having to talk about who? The men. Right? What does it mean to take our power back by taking our sight back and taking our energy back and moving it somewhere else? Devotion, ritual. So can you ritualize? Can we ritualize care so that we can come back into a care practice? So something you can do, I really do honestly like baths. I do believe spiritual baths are important. It's a way to come back to the self. And if you wanted to, you could take a 30-day bath. I don't necessarily have to do that, but there is a way you can ritualize taking a bath for a number of days, and then afterwards then doing a practice, and then taking the bath a couple of days and then doing a practice. What I'm saying is play with a ritual, right? Play with the ritual that will get you to come back to the self in a way that is not full of judgment or shame, but one in which becomes ritualized so that it becomes kind of mundane. And in doing so, that is how we learn how to center the self. Now, if you're in the Patreon, I'll be talking about this. We're going to get together. I've got to just put the new March dates up, but we're going to get together before the equinox, and we'll do it as a group. Okay. I'll walk you through a ritual. If you're not part of the Patreon, I still do recommend getting into and kind of sitting down and contemplating with yourself what again, a 31 day ritual practice you could do that you would start on the equinox as a way to welcome in your new year. Welcoming in the new year by welcoming in you taking responsibility for writing your new story. And you write your new story by inhabiting your body. So you can only inhabit your body when you're in your body. And that ritualization, that ritual will be opening up that road, opening up the year into you remembering you. All right. This is devotion, not discipline, because devotion means one day you consistently doing it for a week. Say you're doing waking up to the sun, and then one day you oversleep. And so instead of beating yourself up and saying, well, fuck it, I can't do it now, I gotta throw my hands up and say screw it, you just say, okay, well, I'm up now, the sun's up, let me go outside and greet the sun because now I'm up. And then the next day, if you get up at the sun coming up, then you do. But it's still a devotional practice. It's giving you flexibility. There's logics to these things, y'all. There's a logic to a ritual. The ritual through a devotional practice allows you the flexibility to learn you. And we're not consistent creatures, okay? We are not. Shit happens. So can we allow shit to happen, but not have that throw us off so that we then throw our hands up and say, well, I can't do anything, because that's another way that we're trained in these systems through these very rigid, analytical, self-judgment ways to give up before we even got started. Do you see what I'm saying? So ritual then reminds us that quote unquote failure is part of the process. And I always used to tell my students all the time, a no is a no is only as a maybe until you've heard no a few times. And this came when it came to like funding and stuff like that. I was telling them that. So when you're going up for funding, when you were trying to get an idea, the no's give you feedback, but the first no should not be fuck it, let's give it up. Okay. Allow the ritual to help you figure out what your pattern is. And I say a 30-31 day, it's a full moon cycle plus a little extra. It gives you the ability, if you want to work in between a moon cycle and a calendar cycle, but it shows you a cycle. The whole point is to cycle, right? This is part of the self-study. This is also what this full moon is asking us to do, learn how to study the self, right? Understanding service and all of these things so that we can figure out collectively what it is our cosmology is. What is spirit? Who are we praying to and why? Right? This is the reflection we need in society right now. And in doing so, there is a way that this allows us to take back a power that the state is very much trying to get us to believe we don't have. Because I do believe that this was a very disrespectful Black History Month, collectively overall. All kinds of shit was going on that was reminding us, right, that you cannot see yourself in a place that needs to consume you. All right? You can't. That's not the purpose of it. You are the feast. So if we believe that and take that offering back and sit here and create somewhere else, then what are we creating? And that's really important right now because we are seeing what destruction looks like. They are purposely going in and they are trying to tear down Iran. They've done it everywhere else. They did it in Venezuela, right? You take out the heads and leave a vacuum. When you leave a vacuum, a power vacuum, anyone will take it. Mexico, we're seeing this right now with the cartel leader. Cartel leader was taken out, so now it's a goddamn war zone in different cities as people vie for power. When there's a power vacuum and when that power was taken by, right? When power was taken by a violent regime and then it was destroyed by a violent regime, then what power, that vacuum will then give us more violence. So we have to believe that. This is why dreaming is strategy right now. You got to figure out what comes next, even if it's really much local. If we know that they're taking apart and pulling apart these institutions, especially school, especially medicine, right? They are making it harder and harder for us to be able to care for ourselves. Then what are the locations of care collectively, communally, locally that we need to create? So that is the tangible things we can do. But then you have to be able to be committed to that. It's not going to always work the first time. It's going to be a lot of ups and downs. So engaging in ritual practices individually as a way to find the self will allow then folks to be able to engage with practices collectively that will require a lot of that ritualization. We'll have to require a flexibility of how things get done, being able to move collectively our feet as the floor is moving. So again, logics, when you bring spirit down, it allows you to have a different way to see what is possible. So this full moon really is asking us, what is our cosmology? What is our spiritual connection? And personally, please don't look for a God outside of you. That big daddy in the sky, I do believe he's real because he's been conjured, but he ain't done a goddamn thing except consistently created children who only way that they can maintain their power and feel powerful is to decimate other people. That is not a God that I want to pray to. That is not a God I want to give an offering to. That is not a God that I even want in existence, quite frankly. So if that is not what we want, but we know that that is a conjured being that has energy attached to it, then how do we create a different being over here? Not the opposite of just creating something over here. So that requires us coming back into the self. That requires taking back that offering, which means you are calling your spirit in. And calling your spirit in is not an easy process. It is death. Pluto in Aquarius in the first degrees, I will say this over and over again, is about death. It is a deconstruction process. We are in the age of deconstruction right now. And when you deconstruct something, when you bulldoze a foundation that is already cracked, what happens? Shit falls through. Some things may get hurt. You're going to find things you did not expect. But in that, you find you. So can you hold you? Can you hold the contradictions of you? Can you allow yourself then in those contradictions to realize what it is you do need and what also you can give? Because we also need to give so we can receive. That shit's real, reciprocity. And then in doing that, who do you want to commune with? Because I'm going to tell you something right now, y'all. I don't want to commune with everybody. I don't want to be in communion with everybody. That's okay. What happens when we're okay with what our preferences are, but those preferences being rooted in a foundational of the self, not in a reaction to who we are told we're supposed to hate? Because right now, Kansas is becoming a case study in what they're trying to do in the revoking of trans rights by trans IDs, folks who are trans having IDs. The smallest population in the state becomes the location of another goddamn experiment. And let me tell you something. I don't give a fuck whether you agree with the lifestyle or not. The minute you tell a person that they have no ability to take over and have say over their body, is the minute you open up the door for the state to come in and wreak havoc on yours. You are not doing what you think you are doing when you are supporting this shit. Aries, Venus and Aries bend our relationship to gender, justice, and money exchange. Because a lot of y'all out here want to sit here and talk about, download this and trans women this and trans folks that, when in actuality, your whole aesthetic is modeled off a trans woman. All your surgeries are based off of the experimentation on trans folks' bodies. So what are we doing here? What is the script we are trying to play? It is not about you putting your personal opinions and beliefs over everyone. It's having to understand that if you do not understand your own body and you do not have the kind of ability to be in your body, when you have been trained to be scared of your body, you will then be the first one to support a state to regulate somebody else's body, which means that you are giving up your offering, you are giving up yourself to be a fucking tool of an authoritarian regime, and they will come for you next. So be selfish. Actually be selfish. Actually be selfish and actually hold yourself. Be in the self. Want to embody the self so that the self is not being told by somebody else who the fuck you are. Take back the self. That is revolution, not being televised, because it has to come inside the self. Everyone wants to jump to a organization or a movement. Everyone wants to jump on a bandwagon, but does the goddamn wagon have any fucking wheels to begin with, y'all? And many times you don't know because you don't look down. You just want to belong. So deconstruction is we are deconstructing from this idea of what even collectives are. This is identity breaking once again. This is identity breaking once again. And I really do think the conversation that happened is whole Black History Month overall, but then ending it with the BAFSAs and this conversation with racism and apology and stuff. All of this is showing us just how much identity has to break because it makes no goddamn sense. It makes no sense. What are we really doing here? So, the world. The cards are saying, right, that it's time to literally paint a new story. And that story has to come from an embodiment of all aspects of the self. When we look at the astrology chart, these will be the angular houses: the first house of self, the fourth house of home, roots, and foundations, the seventh house of relationships and our one-on-one contracts in our life, but also change. Seventh house is change. And the 10th house is our legacy, where we're trying to leave here in this life. They say career, but it's really legacy. What are you painting? What is the world you're creating in those 4 areas? How does the self be reflected upon where you come from? Do you know where you come from? Do you know where your roots and foundations are? And if you do and you're like, yeah, but I don't like them, they ain't shit, well, then why don't you start a new bloodline? I really do mean that. I've been telling a few clients this, looking at their charts, talking to them, listening to their spirits. It's like, baby, both sides really aren't. Yes, you're right. Both sides ain't shit. What does it look like then to believe that and start something new? Start family units, family structures, bloodlines that can actually be fruitful, both in the sacred and mundane. So that when you do die, people will want to call your name. You can actually be helpful, not harmful. Well, then that relates to then the relationships we're in. how we see ourselves through our relationships, because that is the furthest from the self, the 7th house. While 12, 4, and 8 may be hidden from us, 7 is the most nebulous from us because we are trying to find that parts of ourselves. So it's our relationship to change. So how do we engage with change as an energy so that we can change the self, change these foundations, so that we can create legacies that are actually sustainable and humane in nature, if that's what we really want. So full moon in Virgo shines a light on the logics that may not be logical as a way for us to create new stories, new cosmologies. And these cosmologies, though, require collective reflecting upon the stories we have been told about who we are, about how we love, about who our gods are, about who we pray to, about where power lies. And if we realize that we are the center of all of this, because we are the offering, and we, again, take that offering back, then what do we create and why? And who do we create it with? So this is about reclamation of the body. It truly is. And if we don't reclaim the body by pushing back against these fucking laws that are trying to regulate who is even seen as a body, then there is no new future. It's just a replication of the same old shit, y'all, just in a different font. So then what are you devoted to and why? And what is your practice of devotion? And Jalissa, the homework is, what is the ritual? What is the ritual that you could start on the equinox for at least 30 to 31, 28 to 31 days? So either a lunar cycle or a calendar cycle, a monthly cycle, that will get you to come back into a devotion and a ritual of the self as we enter into Aries season and a big ass Aries stellium. All right. Don't worry, y'all. I will repeat the ritual next week as well. If you're in the Patreon, we'll be talking about that when we get together. Tomorrow, I've got the divination study session session. If you're at the Dreamscape level and higher, so you should have gotten calendar invites for that. Okay, y'all? All right, let me wrap this up. I will be teaching. I had to, at the end of last month, change my schedule completely. So I've moved the deconstruction and hoodoo class and the astrology and hoodoo class to this month. So deconstruction and hoodoo will be on, hold on, I just had to change it because my kid's calendar changed, the 18th. So the 18th, I will be teaching deconstruction and hoodoo online. And then the following week on the 25th, astrology and hoodoo online. I'll be talking more about that coming up, okay? So that's going to be through Big Liz Conjure. And if you're in Chicago, I am doing a pop-up at Babes, an astrology pop-up on the 14th as a way to welcome in the equinox, the spring equinox, okay? So the new year. So I'll be doing micro new year readings to see what Aries season brings to folks. So if you're in Chicagoland area, you want to get a reading with me, it's 20 minutes, $40. It's a nice little amoosh boosh of how I read, okay? I'll have some more things coming up. If you are on my Patreon and want to learn more, go ahead and subscribe there, and also my newsletter. Go ahead and subscribe to the newsletter, y'all. It's on my website. Excuse me. I got the Patreon and website mixed up. Go ahead and subscribe to my newsletter on my website. I'm going to start using that. I'm moving off of Substack. I just don't like it. I've tried it for a while. I know all the stuff around who they platform and stuff. I'm going to be honest with you, ain't none of these social media platform shit. I'm just trying to figure out how to navigate these social media streets as a solo business owner who everything has a goddamn price to it, okay? Everything's got a fucking price to it. So, I just don't like Substack. So I'm going to move over to my newsletter. I've been writing a bunch of things and voice noting a bunch of things. So please subscribe there because it's just going to be literally notes from my notes, my notes app as the newsletter, along with upcoming things that I'll be doing. So if you want to read some unhinged things, go ahead and subscribe there. I will be putting those newsletters on the Patreon, but if you know me, it may not necessarily be consistent in real time. So subscribe to the newsletter so to be up to date. And then if you're on the Patreon, you will also be able to catch the lives that I do as well. All right. I think that's it, y'all. I hope y'all are doing and having a good Sunday. It's the first of the month. Oh, first of the month ritual. Go ahead and do you a first of the month ritual, okay? I always recommend, if you like the cinnamon, blow some cinnamon in. If you clean, do some cleaning. If you make a simmer pot, do some simmer pot. Start a first of the month ritual so that you ground in the month, okay? And in doing so, it'll evolve over time. And next week, let's check in about what those rituals are. Okay, so first of the month ritual, figure out what you're going to do today to welcome in this month. We're having a full moon again, like I said. We're having a massive number of planets in Pisces going into Aries. So think about that. First of the month. Full moon opens up this month, and then we have Pisces and Aries energy. So water and fire, work with that within this kind of earth illumination. And then we'll talk about the ritual for the actual equinox for the 20 to 31 days. All right? Okay, y'all. Keep dreaming, keep exploring, because it's through the dreamscapes we can bring the future to say we want to into the present. Till next time. Let us call on the elements to be with us. We start with fire, Act 1. What must burn? See, fire burns, clears, and clarifies. Makes space for something new to emerge. From its embers, creates fertile soil. What needs to burn? To be cleansed, released into the ethers. For you to create space, make space for your pleasure. And then what must you do to activate that energy? See, this is what we are invoking, to go on a journey called pleasure. Do you consent? Let's explore the routes, roads, and places we will need to go to find our pleasure. We start by grounding in the body and believe what it says when it speaks. Which means you gotta be in your body, turn the body on to hear and believe its messages. Body and mind together with your spirit. So then we're talking about faith. Faith in yourself. Activated by the fire of life. I invite the energy of faith in alongside the spirit of pleasure to sit at the table with us. See, we ritualize, we want to memorize and memorialize across space and time, working with the ancestors and elements. So we light the fire and ask, it brings us the clarity we need alongside the spark and passion required to sit in our pleasure. So Act 2, what must be washed? Close your eyes. Go to the water and wash your feet. Feel the waves lick them, reminding you of the materiality of your existence. For the feet are our anchors into the body and its pleasures. Now, make a fire by the water. Speak your wants, needs, and desires, and then give it up to the flame. Ask the elevated ancestors to stand around you and speak to you the ingredients you need for your head to maintain this flame. This is an offering, an act of faith. Faith is based on actions, not just wishful thinking. And this is a time of grounding in one's feet, Pisces, the deep waters, therefore faith. And allowing that to lead one's head, Aries, the fire starter, in the action that needs to be taken to give you clarity on next steps as we enter in to more mess and chaos. You gotta create your own. So Act 3, what must be built? Fire and water are here, now we bring in air and earth. This is where the music and play come in to bring us to our pleasure. A reminder of what it takes to start something new. You have to be a kid again, so what? And go head first, be grounded, naive to what can be, but knowing what is if you stay where you are at. That is much more terrifying. So this is putting faith into you by coming into and talking with the true you. We turn the body on with the music to ignite the wild within us. Fires of the wild burn bright to remind you to always find your inner light. So let your wild be your light in the darkness. I ask the ancestors of the wild to come down and surround us. We call on those who know how to work with the wild, with pleasure as a means of existence. The queer ones, the ancient ones, the ones who know of times when the magic of the moon was respected and in balance with the sun. When oracles were expected to be cared for by those who sought their guidance. When children were censored so their voices had impact on the decisions made for communities. As communities too were centered. Pleasure allows us to dream of what is possible once more, just in different forms. With a cautionary tale to believe the shit we are in and break its spell on our imaginations. That this is all that can be, when there is so much more to explore. Water cleanses, fire ignites, earth ground, air helps us take flight. We work with the elements as we commune through storytelling. The complex landscape called pleasure. Playing with music as a means to get you to activate that last element, which requires your body. So we work with the energy of pleasure to turn that body on. So what does that body want to explore? So check in with yourself and allow your body to speak.